much to this wonderful event. We're very lucky to have the native Ebony LaDelle here to talk about her debut novel, Love Radio. So she is the author of Love Radio, which was People Magazine's best book of the summer, Apple best book of 2022, Amazon's best young adult books of the month, and was featured on the Today Show. Prior to being an author, Ebony was a brand marketing director in book publishing and worked with Penguin Random House and HarperCollins, among others. Born in Michigan, awoken at Howard University, and cultivated in Brooklyn, Ebony can usually be found eating out somewhere or being the undisputed mom friend of any group. You can visit her online at ebonyladalle.com and follow her on social at Ebony LaDelle. Without further ado, we're going to be discussing the book. Just before we start, I just wanted to mention a couple things. Right by the door over there, I have an email sign up list. So if you want to be notified about future programming at Redford, go ahead and sign up there. And we'll also flyers and some upcoming programs that we have. And after the discussion, we'll also be able to purchase a book over in the back and have all right. Hello. Thank you so much.
And use the library for the experience.
Yeah, so like I just mentioned, you're from Detroit, obviously. And in this book, like your love for the city is so evident. What parts of Detroit were the most important for you to highlight in the book, and how did you decide, like, the multitude of things going on here? What parts do you really want to, kind of write this love letter to?
Yeah, so I actually, so I'm gonna backtrack and I'm gonna answer your question. So like you mentioned, I was a marketing director at Random House, my last job, but I worked in book publishing for like 10 years. And I worked on the marketing side, and so I didn't get to acquire books, to like bring books in so that they can be bought and then be published. That's usually the editor's job, and so I was sort of waiting for editors to come in and like, oh, this is a book from a great author, or this is great, we want to publish it, and I never saw it. And it was really frustrating. And so fast forward, when I started going, I was actually thinking about the characters versus the character of the author. So Danielle was the first character that really popped in my mind, very much like myself, as a teenager. And from there, I was trying to find a character who could obviously be Danielle, because she's just not gonna live with anything. And that was a hard part. So okay, Prince has to be very charming. And what is he going to do to not only do her, but how is he going to distribute love advice, because he's a love expert. And so what I kept thinking of was growing up here, going to school with my mom, while she driving work, like making the morning, and like Ricky Smiley and Donna Simpson and all the morning shows, and how they would have like Prince, like we had Prince, and celebrity gossip and love advice. And sometimes love advice is not great. Like I don't, I necessarily wouldn't want to get radio advice from someone on love, but I thought it'd be funny and also interesting that not only gave advice, gave really good advice. And so from there, I realized like, oh, I can't write a story about radio and music and how the influence he actually taking the story and not writing about it. So that was the point in which I was like, okay, I guess I'm doing this. And I say that because I haven't lived in Detroit in a while. It's been like I've lived in Vegas, DC, New York since then. And so I didn't want to get it wrong, like that's always a big end. And you're like kind of one of the first people. So I know there are others from Detroit authors, but there are not a lot of books from like especially the big publishing houses that feature Detroit in the way that it should be. That's not like negative, like in a positive way. And so I was just really afraid, like, what about right? I'm like, call my dad all the time, call Chris, they're like, should I do this, should I do this? And they're just like, everyone, yeah, it's fine. No, we're going to have the fear of just writing something for a person, like something that is really important to you. And so I started to think like all the places that like I thought really like embodied and matching me, like the love of like the culture, the love of like family, all those things. And that's when like, Northland came up, and that's when like the tree lighting ceremony came up. And that's when I started thinking of like all these magical things, and I was like, it would be something cool to like have this Easter setting for the romance. And so at that point, it was really a matter of me cutting down on things. But it was a lot of fun sort of creating these moments and thinking of like romances that I watched back in the day, even now, and how like everything just seems so magical. When I wanted to show, like there's magic in our city, there's magic in going to the skating rink and watching just like dance with each other while they're skating, and like this is background. I wanted to show that.
Yeah, well, I just moved here from Chicago like a few months ago, so I feel like even as I was reading it, I was only thinking about it right now, I'm really excited to see these things and feel like in all of these, so you really did make it come alive in that way. Actually, what you were just mentioning about the movies that you watch, I love in the beginning of the book how Jenny's watching the movies with her mom and kind of teasing her mom for looking for romance and that kind of thing, but then Danny's whole relationship with Prince by her kind of following this. And this book, it is a romance, but you also like tackle so many other things around the story, like, you know, real traumas and, you know, friendship issues and that kind of thing. And I feel like romance often gets, you know, as I'm sure you know, a bad rap because people don't read it and they judge it without knowing. But this book is so much more than a romance, but also still very much at its core one. So how did you balance all of these different aspects of that?
Part of it is because I do feel like I struggle with romances growing up. Like I would read my mom's 5-year romance and be like, I just can't. Like I'm not feeling this, doesn't like speak to me. And I actually did research on like, were there Black romances, like were there romances with Black and brown kids at my age? And I found out that the first Black romance that had like 2 Black characters didn't come out until 2016. It was pretty great. And it made so much sense to me why, because nothing spoke to me. And so when I was writing on radio and thinking about that, I also thought about the fact that like you can't write a romance about 2 Black teenagers from the Midwest and not write about like the things that they're struggling. And it doesn't mean it has to be at the forefront of the story. Like, you know, Prince's mom had an investment, his dad walked out on him because of that. And so he's sort of like the man of the family. And Danny was dealing with a traumatic experience from a friend that sort of put her in a situation where she's dealing with that. And so for me, when I'm talking to kids, like there's so many things that in order to like have something for you know, but it's hard to do those, right? It's hard to do that and try to have like a level. So that was what I wanted to show, and I think why it was so easy to write. People were so kind of shocked by it, but I don't know why, because it's just the experience that I know, like all. And so for me, it's nothing to do all those things, because so I'm happy that I was able to down as well, but it wasn't something when I was writing where I was like, I'm gonna have like 12 different dramatic things happen and they're gonna fall in love inside of it. It's just like I want to make sure I'm actively representing 2 teenagers from the city who have like maybe different like socioeconomic backgrounds, who have different family dynamics, and none of those things make them any better or less than. It's just showing that this may look different to other people, but for the Black experience.
Right, and it's not that any of those things are plot devices.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just trying to normalize different points. So I was trying to normalize, okay, Prince may not have a father and like the father figure. And so, if someone were to be like walking down the street, would they judge him because his father was not there? Like these things are people that put on like this sometimes.
And that makes me think too of when Danny assumes Prince is a single father and he gets so defensive of his friend and all of that. I mean, something that, sorry, I'm skipping a little bit, but made me think of something that I really appreciate about this book is that I think a lot of the way that these characters interact and react to situations and things are really they're just, I mean, they feel real, but at the same time, they feel like almost like they're modeling what healthy reactions and interactions should look like. I guess can you speak a bit more to that idea?
So I like to call Prince and Danny sort of the old school group. There's always one I was that person when I was young. And I think some people who read love radio and they'll say, and some people have said, like, well, they just seem so mature. And it's like, yeah, I did make them work out. Like, I wanted them to make mistakes on the page, but I also wanted them to be I kind of want teenagers. I want it to be a learning. Like, I want someone to read it and not necessarily think that they're learning something. They're learning something. And being a teenager is really hard. You deal with a lot of emotions. You're growing in every shape, way, and function. You know, you go from being like, now I have, you know, like I look like a woman, but and I, in some ways like one, but also in some ways I feel like a child. I'm expected to make decisions of the rest of my life, which is weird. You know, it's a lot that teenagers are dealing with. And so what I wanted to show is in all those emotions, like if someone does you wrong or if this happens, I know you want to just like put your emotions on full display, but also, what if you try this? You know, so like maybe it's a moment in the book was important to me, so that it's like, well, maybe this will encourage me more to, you know, try to.
Yeah, I mean, and that's really so like clearly what I got from that was that it was, it feels like almost like a roadmap to helping things. And so one of, those various moments with Dani's friendship with Destiny, very toxic relationship. So I guess what advice do you have for teens or for anyone really who feels like they might be in something like that and doesn't know how to recognize that?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess first thing actually to give context for anyone who doesn't know. So Dani has a friend, Destiny, who essentially is a friend since like middle school, and they go to a party, which Dani thought it was gonna be one kind of party, it ended up being a different kind of party, and Dani is put in a situation that makes her really uncomfortable, makes her upset, Destiny kind of leaves her angry. And so she has fears of just friendships in general. Like she kind of distanced herself from everybody because she sort of feels like she doesn't feel like she can make a proper decision. And I put that in there because I don't think like friendship breakups are talked about. Especially amongst girls, like women, like, and I'm not, there's no shade in that, but I do think like there is a bond that I have with my female friendships that is just like, to some extent, like they're my spouses, they're really important to me. And anytime that I've had a friendship that did not work out, it was devastating. And even if, and the other part of that is you expect for like a friendship breakup, like it's hard, even with breakup, like usually it's like, this is it, like this person cheated on me, they did this and I have to go. Well, it's complicated when it's friendship because at what point are you gonna say like this friendship does no longer serve me? And so that was why I wanted to talk about it and also show that like they can start off a certain way, like they can start off being a really good friend, and then over the course of years, change. Like you might elevate in a certain way, they might not, and it doesn't make them one way or another. Like I think the other issue is when I was a teenager and I was reading over my journal and so to confirm, there was like always black and white. It was like this person did this person that, this person did this person is that, and you get older and realize a lot more nuance, like somebody might be in a bad situation because of things that are happening at home or this or that, but at the end of the day, if you're good friends with them and you address like, I'm having issues with how you're treating me, and they don't respond to it, like they don't value your friendship enough to say, okay, then I need to sort of change, then it might be time to let them go. And so my advice would be to like, just, I don't know, always keep inventory of your friendships. Like you don't have to be everything that this person wants to pick that up. But it is important to say, okay, like how is this person just showing up for me? Like, do they look out for me? Do they have me up when like if things happen? Or are they always critiquing things that I do? Like a little fear. Like really look at the small things to see if they're good, because yeah, they might not stab you in the back, but if they're, like digging little bitty holes with you, like it ends up turning into emotionally abusive relationship, or just a bad relationship and it affects you.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times young people in general, teens feel like to lose a friendship like that is almost a failing, when in reality maybe it is the better thing for yourself and even for that person and for other people to, the grown-up thing to to move apart.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, loyalty, which I think is another big point. Again, particularly in Black and brown communities, this idea of like being loyal to a friend, you know, just because like they're your close family, and for certain people, like friends are, you know, you have stronger relationships with them, you're closest to them, and so it is harder when things break apart, but you know, loyalty can only go so far. If they are putting you in bad situations, if they are making bad decisions for themselves, you know, even if they're self-harming themselves, a lot of times I always say if a person is not treating themselves right, you can't expect them to treat you right. So that's another indicator to me, like how are these people, like how do they look out for themselves? Because you can't expect them to give you more respect.
Right. And then kind of as a foil to that experience with Destiny, I love that you also really highlight the relationship with Regina and Essie and like with the hair show and these things, it's, you know, her kind of love story, I guess, with her two best friends is just as important as her one with Prince.
Yeah.
So I guess talk a bit about the hair show, because I love that scene so much, and you know, what does this represent for Dani and Prince and their relationship?
Yeah, so Essie and Rashida are two of Danny's other friends, and on the flip side, I consider just showing a negative, like, female friendship, I also want to show a positive one, and also show friendships that, like, even when you were not doing the best friend, you know, like, and technically Danny wasn't a great friend because instead of just understanding that Destiny was, she was like, I'm just letting her. Anybody, and that is the defense mechanism, like hide from everyone because, like, if I hide from everyone, nobody can hurt, right? But that doesn't make her a good friend. And so I want to show what happens to look out. They just would not give up. They kept loving her, you know, like they gave her her space. And then, I mean, she just rolled up on her in the bathroom, like, what's up? You know, why are we not talking? And so that was important for me to show. Because I wanted to also show that when things happen to you, you can't just choose to like. I think a lot of times the relationships and friendships, when like someone is hurt by love, they're just like, I'm going to it completely, and that's not healthy. It's not healthy. Everybody needs love. So that's why I wanted to show that. And then with the hair show, I mean, the hair show came out of a lot of things. It sort of came out of me also being ready, because as I was writing, I was in corporate America still, and it was like right before COVID. And I remember this was at a time where, like, as I can see, I have nails on, and these are short, especially for me, like this is short. But you know, hair and nails is such a big, like, it's such a big part of the culture. It's like a way to have like creative expression. Like you have these artists that can hair shows, and they be like flipping and cutting and upside down. I'm just like, you go to a park and like hang on, you know, to like hang upside down like that, you know, but it was an event, you know, and it was something that I was TV. I went to like a few smaller hair shows. I never participated because I was too afraid. But I noticed in corporate America, all of a sudden, like some of the younger teenagers coming up, all of a sudden it went from like, you don't wear nails in corporate America. You don't have to wear in corporate America. And I was trying to fight against that. And so I was coming to work with nails and hair. And it's like, no, that's, like, you know, that was really frustrating. So all of a sudden it's mainstream. Now I have other girls walking into the office also with their manicure and like the bigger curlier hair. And it's like, so now it's acceptable when it's commercial and it's made. But when I used to do it starting out, they were saying everything, but like they basically were calling together. You know, like it was the tone that they were using that was really frustrating to the point where I left this because of that. And I felt like this is not fair. Like we should have our credit. You know, like this is where a lot of this like creative expression started. And so, and then me and my friends were texting about just like different things that were also being rebranded. So like something that was new brand is something called a silky sheet. Something was this, called this. And I'm like, this is not what it's called, and this is not fair, and this is appropriation. Like, you know what I mean? Like, give credit where credit is due. And so I wanted to showcase that, and I was like, I felt like I've seen anything in literature that also showcases like it's like And during COVID, I know they had to stop it for a little bit, and, then I like did some research and found out from the writer who started Hero Wars was also a DJ, and that's how he started Hero Wars. And I was like, oh, this all tied together way too well. So, it was a lot of fun to write that scene, and also it was a nice way to like show Dani sort of like evolving. It was kind of like her being out of like, you know, from a caterpillar to a butterfly, like her finally letting go of like not being around her friends and being antisocial, and kind of her stepping back into society and saying, oh, I'm slowly living. It's okay for me to talk about here.
Yeah. And to deviate a little bit, I'm curious how, and I know this is your debut and you've worked in publishing for so long. But so when you decided to make that leap into like, you know, I'm done with corporate America and this, like, what did that look like for you?
I mean, you know, I'm still here. So it happened this March, so it wasn't very long. It was like a couple months before the book went on sale. And I did it because I also have a pretty solid reputation in publishing. And so I knew that I could always get a job again, but I knew that like I would never do it anymore. And there were a lot of things that were expected of me, including doing a lot of like in-person events where I have to talk, and I'm introverted, so that was a lot for me. Like it was actually like training to be on the road, but then also have to be at work, you know, working on the Zoom meeting or whatever. And I was then thinking as much about this, and also like there was, you know, they want me to write more stuff, and so trying to like coordinate. It was easy to write and work because I would get up extra early and right before I would have to start my day. But once we started factoring like requests from booksellers and requests from the sales team and like all this stuff we kept doing, all the events and traveling and all, like it just was a lot. And that's and it's been nice, like, you know, also there are things that, you know, you gotta be mindful of, like, I'm fortunate enough that, I have a spouse that, you know, I have a two-parent family, like, household, when it comes to that help, I was able to save, it was something I considered doing, if I was saving from my corporate job, so that, like, when I wanted to eventually do it, I could, at least, however long I wanted to, and so, yeah, that's what it looked like, and now it's structuring, like, my day with writing and like in between traveling, trying to write and find a way to keep moving.
Yeah. Well, I asked because I feel like a lot of the things that Prince and Dani are kind of moving forward in their lives are also kind of taking these leaps of faith. And like with Prince is, you know, uncertain about whether or not he can go to New York and all of these things. And you know, Dani is such a lover of classic writers and all these things. And again, for people who haven't read the book, she writes letters to her favorite authors, which is something that I love. That idea of being used, almost. So I guess talk a little bit about that, and also what is the book or the author that you feel like of all the authors that Dani loves, or you can say others too, but I don't know, what's your part book?
Okay, so I'm gonna start with first. I'm probably
It's okay.
but yeah, taking the probably or I don't want to at some point. But also I wanted to show how difficult it is, like at any stage, and I guess example, like even as a whole adult, like you still have to take leaps of faith. And do things that might scare you, but if it's like your dream is something you want to do, you want to go for it. And so I wanted to show Dani and Prince doing that in different ways. So like Dani, I don't like without giving too much, but Dani, like she's always been gonna go. She wants to go to New York because that's where you go to be around. At least back in I feel like post COVID, you don't have to. Yeah, it's been awesome. So you're like really like a stroller eyes up there. But yeah, she wanted to move to New York, and Prince was on the fence about what he wanted to do. But also it was because Prince has a lot on his plate. You know, he has a radio show, in addition to taking care of family. I think, you know, without it being on the page, I would obviously see that there was some guilt. Well, no, it was on the page, some guilt in like leaving, you know, his family and his mother because he feels like he needed. And I wanted to show that even though those things like there are people, even if you like you are a caregiver, there's something that, you know, is that you have to do, or take care of people, or take care of things, and whatever, like, you still should go out and do what you're gonna do, because you don't want to. And so that was sort of the idea, was trying to help them throughout the story, is like help them understand that, like, there are other ways that you can do it all, you know, even if it feels like really hard, it is possible. So yeah, that's that part. And then books, authors. I would say, one of my favorite authors is Toni Morrison, and for me, I love Toni Morrison because, she also was on both sides, like she was an editor and she also wrote like all these classics. And to me, she was sort of like what I used as a blueprint. So, I actually, when I watched her, I can't remember when that movie came out, but I watched it, and it actually like re-inspired me, right? It was like, okay, that's how like you did it, you can do it, you know, but there is something to seeing someone who looks like you, who is doing this thing that we'll say is impossible to do. Because the other thing is, for some reason, publishing people don't like for you to work on other things at all. Like it's a bit taboo. So I wanted to but and I did, like, and I wanted to show people that you can do that too. But yeah, so Toni, I would say, is my author of choice because Toni is good.
We haven't talked about Prince a ton. So obviously important because is the music. And I'm a musician, so that's the part that always speaks to me. And I love the idea that he is not only a DJ, but like start to think of himself as a curator in that way. And I love that so much. But so I guess talk a bit about the relationship with both has music and obviously also with Prince of historic Music City. And what was your soundtrack while you were in?
Yeah, you know, Detroit is, I don't know, I have when I say like my love letter to Detroit in this story, it was kind of like when also my publisher, but I just feel like Detroit, I got tired of like the bad rap that Detroit got. Like every time I look in the media, there's a new movie, there's a book, there's something, it's like, oh, this is cool, this somebody get shot. I'm just like, why does it always have to happen? And this is so annoying. It's actually pissing me off. And one of the parts that also pisses me off is like, I don't necessarily know if we did enough love for how Redford this country used, like the world's musical sound, you know, like I listen to artists in the UK and they're like, yeah, I'm inspired by Aretha and Margaret. I'm like, you know, like it's just like that's the story, you know. And so I wanted to like really hone that in, like not forget where this came from, where this sound came from, you know, and how Detroit that, you know, like this is really important to like know. So that's why I did put the Motown Museum in the book because it was really important. Like music in my home was major. My dad is like a huge music dad. Like we listen to music every day, every night, like all the time. And so for me, like I will hear certain songs, especially old school songs, and it literally will kind of timeline. It was like, okay, when I listened to this song, we lived here, or we were doing this, or this happened. So for that reason, I think I have a soundtrack. Like I would listen to like instruments, like old time music, like while I was writing sometimes. But because I'm so emotionally attached to the song, I'm just gonna start singing and thinking and this thing. And my reminiscing is like a barbecue or like me in my car singing. So like I was coming to love. Like why am I so into this song? But I did listen to a lot. I also saw a lot of things. So I did listen to a lot of music like before writing the thing to also get my have those same sort of memories. Another thing that I wanted to do, which it's like a love radio playlist on Spotify album and title, so y'all can find it. I tried to like put songs that were sampled by other artists. So songs from today that were like recent, like in the times. And I wish there was a way that I could kind of put notes on the playlist, so then I can say like this is the original artist and these are the samples. But I was inspired by like during COVID watching like young DJs actually doing that. They would say like, this is the original, this is the remake, and they would basically just like, pretty much, they would just, you know what I mean, like, fall machine. And I was just talking about integration plus because I love the roots. And I love that basically Questlove said that he is in the roots band so that he can fund his day and like collect music, which I'm just saying. How would really just be like, oh yeah, I'm just in like one of the greatest bands so that I can just actually get you today. And so yeah, I feel like watch a lot of his videos and like listen to a lot of his videos. But yeah, I mean, music is everything, and that was honestly the hardest part was deciding what I put in there and what I.
Right. Yeah. Like it's so funny as we were talking, like that also is my whole childhood. Like my dad's not a musician, but like the biggest music nerd who will ever be. Like he knows every fact about every person that ever walked through Motown doors. Like my lullabies when I was a child were Motown songs. He would sit and sing like sitting on top of me. He was like, and I also identified so hard with Prince because I'm known in my friends and music stuff, and they're like, you don't know the song from 1963, and you know, they're like, okay. And, yes, and I love that aspect of it so much. And I guess kind of to tie all that together, and we've talked about this a lot, obviously already, but this book, you know, is at its core a celebration of Black love and culture, and just it portrays so many different kinds of love, like we talked about, and I guess if you had to kind of synthesize your feelings about that into something brief.
Yeah, I mean, again, this book is sort of, I wrote it as like this is for childhood, right? And so, I always say, you know, I am here because I'm a product of Black love versus. And so that's the first reason why it's important to me, but also, my goal as a writer is to always write stories that center like Black girls and Black women. Like that is just obviously one of Black women that's really important to me. And I just felt like when I was growing up and I was watching, so there was me watching like The Love of Basketball and Wood, and I say those two movies specifically because it was like Black movies that really felt more like porn movies because you had the characters when they were younger and also. And we also watching like 10 Things I Hate About You, and Notebook, and all these other. Well, Notebook wasn't really a teen, but 10 Things I Hate About You was. And She's All That, and those movies. And I love those movies too, but as a coming of age movie, and a movie that is targeted to teenagers, it was always the side character that was the Black. Like, never got a lead, never was the one swept off her feet. She was just always the one that gave like leading relief or gave the sass or gave whatever. And I just felt like that was a missed opportunity. Like, I'm looking at Love and Basketball as my couple of age story because I didn't think. And so that is why I wrote this story, because I do feel like there needs to be more book. I'm not opposed to any type of story, you know, but I also think like, why don't we have more of these? And so that was the catalyst of me writing it. You know, hopefully one day maybe Love Radio will be a movie, and then like that will be, you know, one of these things from that everybody can watch and appreciate, just like I watched and appreciate She's All That and 10 Things I Hate About You.
Sorry, this is just something kind of random that I was thinking about as you were talking, but I'm just curious, how much involvement do you get in like the audio productions and stuff? Because I listened to the audiobook, and those narrators' voices were just the most like musical, like soothing. I don't know, and I felt like they made everything that you've been talking about come alive so much more even. Were you involved in that at all?
Yeah, that's one of the benefits of like working with movies. Like I was involved in the cover, and this is the thing, not all authors are, and I know that that's like privilege I had and you're thankful for. Like this cover is like something on, can we do this? Like I want this, and I want this, and I want that. And I remember like I think I was actually driving and I told her, I was at a friend's spot, and I just started crying. I was like, money, I got it. But it is nice to be heard, and so that was the other thing, like with audiobook, I actually made it a request, and I was like, one, I would love it to be like, just like the book is dual POV, you know, both from Prince and Dani's perspective, I would love the narration to be like that, because I think it breaks up the story, like, it's nice to have a female voice, and I also got to listen to like the options that they had, and so, the audio narrator for Dani is, I can't remember the name, but she has done audio narration for a lot of books and a lot of events. It's like for anyone who's read Blackout, she's done audio narration for that. One True Love, which is like Elise Bryan, who's another YA romance author. So I already love her. So for Prince, I already listened to a few, and then the person that I did, I remember like he said like the first few lines, and I was like, oh, his voice is deep and it's getting great. So this is perfect. I'm asking. So it was really, and I'm happy that it was like an Apple like best audio book or something like that. So I'm really happy that they let me choose, and I'm just happy that I was like, can I get a Midwestern for you too? Right? And they're like, I mean, I don't think have that in the database. I'm just like, okay, let me do this. Let me not be too specific, but it was that like if I could have had that, that would have been great, but I am equally as happy. Yeah,
So it was a non-sequitur,
Oh,
but thinking about it. So I guess this is my last couple of questions for you. You know, I know it's hard to kind of say a one-liner for, you know, takeaways and that kind of thing, but is there like is there an idea or like a question that you want readers to walk away from book radio?
I can hear a question.
Thesis or
Yeah.
things.
Anything. I would say the first thing to me that's important, that'll probably be a takeaway for all of my books is self-love. And so as you read the book, you sort of see them like they're liking each other, but they're also alone. They're like sort of journeys to try to decide if like they can make it work. And I'm not gonna spoil it, but I think anybody who actually knows girls in chapter, they know. So that would be my first thing is just you gotta love yourself. And so if there are things that you gotta work out, like it is gonna show itself in the relationship. That's one thing about relationships. I think a lot of people get into them thinking that they deny them. It's actually the opposite. If you know the when it just like made everything bigger. Like everything's out there on stage, you just go so exposed. And so you have to trust the person, but you also have to trust yourself. And I think a big part of trusting yourself is feeling confident in yourself, feeling comfortable with yourself, just loving yourself. And so that is my first thing. Like at the end of the day, if you feel like you're a mess, I know it might suck, but it might be worth breaking up with the person because there could be hope down the line. But if you're such a mess that you're gonna completely outside of the relationship, then you might like to misread that opportunity. And then the second thing is, again, writing these characters is, I just wanted to show, I did for Dani when I wrote her, I didn't make her immediately on the page. I did that on purpose because I do think as a Black teenager, as a Black woman, you have to show up in a certain way to make people feel comfortable. You can't get too angry. You can't, you should smile, you should be happy, you should do this, you should do that. And I just want to normalize a Black teenager. That I'm hoping like this book will be one of the many that do that. But I want you to see the teenager like Dani in person, and be like, oh, she's a teenager who's going through some stuff, and like, let's get through that first. The same with Prince. Like Prince is cool, he's kind of all over the place, but also if you see what's happening, like everything that he, trying to hold down, there's a reason why people do. He's like, I already got a lot of stuff going on. I just want to get it to this girl, I want to get her to her, and take her out, and I'm not thinking about school like that because there's more responsibilities that I'm not bringing it in. And I just want people to like understand the full scope of like a Black teenager before they like
Yeah. And lastly, I'm just curious if you have any shots of some of your favorite YA authors, right? Not just your peers. Like romance or anything.
but that Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of great authors out there. Some of my favorites are favorite authors. She wrote The Codex, With the Fire of Nile, Happy New Land. Another romance that I love is Blackout, which is by 6 like best-selling authors, and it's set in New York, and it's Blackout in New York. I'm trying to think of authors that are not like everybody. Or a lot. Other authors, Elise Bryan is another one who writes like romances and make you feel like black teenage girls, and I really love her work. I would say those are the.
Okay, yeah. Well, thank you so much for answering our questions and yeah, of course, anyone have any questions for Ebony? Yeah, okay, great.
I just wanted to mention, there is one person who wrote a YA love story, her name is Dana Davidson, and she was an English teacher from Caltech, she's from Detroit. And she wrote 2 books. And if I remember correctly, the last time I saw her, she expressed that at that time, I think she was published by Disney, Hyperion. It was around the craze of Twilight.
Okay.
You know, they were looking for the next Twilight book, and she never wrote anything else, to my knowledge, after that. She doesn't teach anymore, but she was an English teacher at Cass. I think she might work for U of L now. But that came out just before you were there. So that was, yeah, but, so that's a book you can go back and look. And I was hoping after that came out, you would see more, but not a lot. You know, this story here or there.
Twilight was.
Yeah, about 2006.
Do you remember, it was Disney, so I did research for this too, and there was another author, it was 2000. I thought it was 2006, there was another author, which I don't think it's the same one, but they started like a black, romance imprint, at some publisher, and.
Oh, I know which one you're talking about.
I actually just.
It was through Kensington, wasn't it?
I think so.
Yeah, and they had a whole series, and some of them were adult authors that wrote YA, and it was kind of like urban romance.
Yeah. And that was, I think it might have been around the same time.
It was.
Yeah, because, they said that was like technically the first one that was grounded, that was the first like black YA.
Yeah, because I did a presentation at MLA, I can't think of any of the authors, but a lot of the authors were, adult authors that wrote for, YA, but, I truly enjoyed the book. I love the Detroit references, Northman, Roller Rink, Dutch Girl Soda, which is no longer with us.
I'm like, oh, I know, now it's like full time capsule, like the avenues, memories, but I go back and forth about like using real places versus fictional places, and I kind of mix it up. But so even like there's one day that they have is like at Pearl Books, and it's paying homage to one of my friend's father who had Pearl, records back in the day. And I'm hoping that my friend brings it back out, so it's kind of my way of saying like. People already know,
And I also appreciated the descriptions of the neighborhoods, and like you said, it's nice to see the normalization of Detroit, because a lot of times, especially if you look on the news, they bring the same pictures and the same destruction. So it's nice to see a positive.
Yeah, like the same houses that are like almost torn down, it's frustrating. And it's frustrating too, because when I started to live in different places, it was just the way people talk about it. I'm like, yo, it's not that bad. You know what I mean? Like, I get it. Like, and also I was a shelter child. Like, I get that too, but like, this is crazy. Like, so you basically saying I should come out looking like, like, so, it's weird how it's, and, yeah, I was
As a person who's traveled, I get it. You say you're from Detroit, it just look like. And then when I visit other cities and you listen to the news, really?
Yeah, I mean, I live in this town, I think that's a really good example, because to me, like, DC, there are elements that remind us of what but also they're struggling, and I think that's the other thing, like, for a lot of people, even if they're not, like you said, who live in Chicago, or exactly, like, if you think of any inner city, there are always these things, you're all dealing with the same issues, with crime, you're dealing with, but also like it's the resources, and so that was the other part of it. When you talk about therapy and stuff like that, like not having access to those things affect you, so what are other ways in which I can show how to like popular food helps their music therapy? So that's why Prince listens to certain songs to help him, and I know people in my family who they have a very form of therapy, they're struggling, which is what I did when I was younger, and even when I didn't have the words to express myself, I would write it out, and all of a sudden, like, oh, okay, this is actually how I feel. And so it's the same thing, like, I just wanted to show, like, yeah, we might not have as many resources, but also, like, we have to really, like, the idea that you can not have all these things and still have, like, beauty and culture and love and, like, the music and just overall love, like, to me, it just shows the resilience of a group of people, and I wanted to make that. Thank you for telling me that. I don't get that question.
Yeah, I want to say thank you, and I enjoyed my pages that I. But, just one comment about the images that they portray, that is by design, they show a certain group.
Yeah.
Anyway, I wanted to also say that, I want to ask, did you have any publishing content challenges? You know, when you, like, you're writing, and the publisher, did they challenge some of the things?
Oh, like some of the things that no, and again, that is because, and this is me learning again. So I always knew I wanted to write, I didn't know when or how, and when I went to Howard, like, you know, I always wanted. When I went to Howard, I worked at the Howard University Bookstore. And I did, it was just like a program to just help me like financially. And it's when like I started to have, we had all these author signings, I met like Quincy Jones, it was like the craziest thing to me. But I also met his publicist and I met his marketer, and then that's when I started to realize, oh, there's like a whole machine behind publishing. Or like publishing a book, and I just never thought of it, but why would I? I'm like, I'm a teen, essentially, right? And so very much like my dad, I like to know how the sausage is made, like very business minded, so that's why I went into publishing. But also, as I was in it, I'm like, oh, I'm actually really happy I did it this way, because at least I have the information to arm me, so that like, when I do go out and start writing, I can say, oh no, I'm gonna do this, or I'm not doing this, it's not how this goes, it's how it goes. I didn't really have to like, do a lot of that, because I had that respect, so people, they knew like, okay, Ebony knows how this works, so don't try to play her. But it's also why I came out with this book first, because I wanted to show that like, this is me, you know what I mean? This was my child, this is a very big part of who I am, and a lot of people only knew me as just like a professional. And so I wanted to like sort of convert hope and publishing, where they might have assumed that, oh, Ebony only has like one type of life. It's just like, no, but see, this is why you need to be publishing more people from other cities outside of New York, you know, because you're missing out on some really rich storytelling, but you have a narrative of how an author is supposed to look, and that's not me, you know, like that's not doing it. So no, I didn't have any pushback. But I did tell myself before we went on submission, if I did have pushback, then I wasn't gonna write it. You know, like I was gonna either, it was gonna be my way or not at all, because I had so much fun writing it. I wasn't. So, and my editor was really good. Anything she could actually pushed me a little bit more to talk about things that like I was struggling with, but yeah.
I have two questions.
Okay.
The first one is I was very impressed with the book in terms of just how the interaction was. I mean, you know, more credit. A lot of dynamic of love in the book, uncle and the nephew, brother and the mother and the brother, and just, there's a lot of different dynamics of love going on, but I just wanted to comment that, but also, as your blog so active, color books.
No. No, I started a blog a long time ago to like highlight books by authors of color out of my frustration work in the industry, and I feel like there was enough like representation of it, and now we're seeing a lot more. I mean, that's the beauty of social media, like you're seeing a lot more authors or bookstagrammers promote books. It's great that like libraries, like Detroit Public Library, have social media platforms that are able to see, books by different writers, but no, I don't, it hasn't been active recently.
Okay.
Maybe one day I'll start.
I know you're loving.
Any other questions? Guess what's next?
I am writing. I don't want to talk about it. Well, no, 'cause honestly, people have very like strong opinions about what radio and what actually next. And one of the things that I enjoyed was even before I went on to this book, when it happened, a lot of people in publishing were like, I didn't know this, bro. What is this? What is going on? And I heard something about the quietness of no one knowing what you're doing, so that you're completely focused. You're not letting other people influence you. So it is romance. It is with my publishing.
I look forward to reading.
What is that?
I look forward to reading it.
Thank you.
It is hard to be a creative and be like, so what is in maybe?
But I can't, and I protect my art and say I can't, and I won't until I'm ready. Because I do want to make sure that like, whatever it is, even if people like don't always understand it, like I want people to come and trust me. And so that's why I keep myself on the tight end. Yes.
So when you were little, did you like pretend to write or do a lot of reading, was reading something like this?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I read, listen, Goosebumps. Every week I was at the library getting the next wave of art sign, and I got to meet him in person, it was like a dream. But yeah, I was reading all of the books, and it wasn't, my mom would take me to the library at the time we were living in Oak Park and in Southfield, and so she would take me to the library like every week. That was our like free, cheap free event to do. And she's also an avid reader. And then it wasn't until I read The Skin I'm In. That was the first book that I read, and I remember seeing the cover, and I was like, which is why I was love radio, the cover was so important to me. I remember seeing the cover. For anybody who doesn't know The Skin I'm In, it's about a dark-skinned girl who is insecure and who's just like trying to like gain confidence in herself. Skinny girl, and I was like, this is all me. Like I saw the cover and I was like, she looks like she has my face. And so I didn't even know what the book was about. I didn't care. I was like, I have to pick that up.
Did you read the sequel?
She just put up.
She has the sequel too.
I haven't read the sequel, but I-
And we had the pleasure of having Sharon Blake at the Detroit Public Library a couple of times. We used to do we still do a program called Author Day, and she won for The Skin I'm In and another book. And she's awesome. And this is, I think, the 25th, or was it the 20th year?
I think it was the 20th.
Yeah, and she has a follow-up to that, which is excellent.
I know.
Yes, so I would highly recommend, and she picks up the story at a different angle that I wasn't expecting, not to give too much away, but it's very current to what's going on in society.
You got me, I'm like, she's that Sharon is the group, but yeah, I would like both little booklets, stapled together. When I was in middle school, I still was protected by my art, so I wrote like this thriller mystery, and you read it, right? And you don't worry, because it was like a kidnapping.
Like 9.
9 or 10, something like that. It was like a kidnapping story.
Well, I think what's really doing like dark. But nah, it's so dark.
Yeah.
Well, if that is all the questions people have, please give it up for Miss Ebony. And here are, folks back there that you can buy, and then we will sign. And like I said, there's, a flyer for upcoming Redford programs up on that tall table over there. And take your right email. So, thank you so much for coming.
You want to do one line?